This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
And who knows what that future will look like.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. The crapshaw revolution.
And that's help mom's microbiome and prepare what the baby will get.
There is absolutely no clearer indicator of your health than your happiness.
I tell people, become useless to the healthcare system by being healthy.
So children are the future.
I eat lots of veggies, so I'm very healthy.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the health journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? In season 1 of The Shift, we explore the fascinating field of gut health and help you discover what is really going on with your digestion, microbiome, and health.
The gut is amazing.
Changes our concept of the human body.
Become useless to the healthcare system.
We're always shifting. Your genes are shifting, your microbes are shifting, everything is shifting.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift. As we approach the end of this docu-series on gut health, we can now turn our attention to the future. What is the future of gut health? The microbiome and gut are such burgeoning areas of research that I know that in 5 or 10 years we are going to discover so much more. If you're feeling sad that we're coming to an end, don't be. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the expert series, where we will deep dive into even more great info with each of our experts. Let's begin with Doctor of Chinese Medicine, author and health crusader Nat Kringoudis. I've chosen to share this remarkable story with you to demonstrate that there are different pathways we can take when it comes to our health, and that we can significantly influence our outcome depending on our choices. Here is Nat's story.
It wasn't really until I became a mum that I really knew what illness was when Geordie was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. So he's 7 now, but that was without doubt the biggest challenge I've ever had to live through. He was diagnosed when he was 4 weeks old. So you've got this brand new teeny tiny baby, and that was a whirlwind just in terms of, getting this phone call from the Children's Hospital saying, "How's your Christmas?" And I said, "Fine. Why are you asking me?" And she said, "Oh, well," then she explained Geordie had shown up positive to CF. We were then ushered into the hospital for what I call CF boot camp, which was sort of 4.5 days of really intense information and learning about CF, learning about what his needs would be. And this is not their fault, and this is just, again, speaking about the difference between the medical model and complementary medicine. But it was this whole fear-based and worst-case scenario approach that your life has changed, things are very different now, this is very serious. If you don't do what you're told to do, you're basically going to be in a lot of trouble, and he was going to have a lot of challenges. But, the research that was coming through was very positive, and that we could hold on to the hope of them finding what they call a cure for CF. We were sitting with the dietitian, and she at one point alluded to the fact that these kids fail to thrive. So you're faced with this challenge of immune issues, lung problems and digestive issues. And so this dietitian's there telling me that, just feed him McDonald's, and he's 4 weeks old, so he's not at the point where he's eating McDonald's, but alluding to the fact that he's so lucky he can eat whatever he wants, he's not going to gain weight. But at the same time, you need to try and feed them as much as you can. And it was at that point that I was like, I just can't do this today anymore. And I remember saying, all right, I just need to go home. And she looked at me and my husband looked at me, and I'm like, it's time to go home. Like, I can't do this anymore today. No disrespect to you at all. I've had enough for today. We got to the Friday, and it was the day we were going to talk about his regime and what he needed in terms of medications. And I remember on our way into the hospital turning to my husband, and I just had this feeling come over me. I was like, what happens if we made it okay? And my husband's like, as he often does, because I come up with all sorts of weird and wonderful ideas. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, babe, sure. And I'm like, no, but what happens if it could be okay? And he was like, well, okay, well, I'm sure it's going to be okay, sort of thing. And I'm like, no, but we could make it okay. Like, I feel like this is going to be okay. So we went in there and we sat with the paediatrician, At the time, and I don't know if it's changed, the treatment for Geordie was a 2-year prophylactic dose of antibiotics. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And they're like, well, this is what we want to do to make sure that he doesn't get sick. And I said, but what about his liver? And they were like, well, unfortunately, Nat, in the way that we work, we don't really look at the liver, we just look at his lungs. And I said, and what about his gut? And they're like, again, it's more about his lungs than his gut. And I said, no, it's all about his gut. The lungs are secondary. And I said, look, no disrespect, guys, but we're either going to have to come up with a plan that works for all of us, or with every fibre of my being, what you're asking me to do, I just can't do it. And I'm not prepared to do it. And either we're going to be on the same page and we're going to do this together, or I hate to say it, but I'm just going to lie to you. Because, you're going to judge me for not doing what you're asking me to do, yet in the pit of my stomach, I feel sick for what you're asking me to do. His doctor said, okay, what do you want? And I said, I want a year without antibiotics. And he said, you can have 6 months. And I said, great. And he said to me, but if this child gets sick in the next 6 months, basically, he didn't say you're at my mercy, but he alluded to the fact that I'm in charge here. And I said, okay, no problem. So it was really interesting because from that, there was such a turning point to advocate for what felt right for him as a mum. And, mother's intuition, there's nothing getting in the way of that. And nor should there be. And if you're in a position where you're second-guessing that, it is never wrong, ever, ever wrong. And so, then we went on to have this really lovely conversation about how, the worlds that we live in and the world that they live in are polar opposites. But we wanted to try and integrate them where we thought that was appropriate. And we left that hospital feeling like I had some type of control over the situation once again and that it was going to be okay. We really started to focus on looking for evidence of health in Geordie, like where could we see health, what was working, and really not dismissing the illness side of it, but just not focusing on it and not really creating much room for it, I guess, and really creating a lot of room for health and well-being. And very quickly what I realised was that the more you looked for evidence of health, the more you found it. And it was just this beautiful snowball effect that just all of a sudden took off. And sure, there were days where he would get sick and I would be like, oh my goodness, what do we do? And there were a couple of times where I was like, we might need to head for the antibiotics. You can't sort of head into 5 or 6 weeks of coughing is a long time for someone with CF. But again, at the same time, he's also human and a child. So what has been so beautiful is that he just turned 7. He's never been medicated. He's never had antibiotics. He's never had any other medication other than his digestive enzymes. We now don't really do anything special, but we did a lot of special things at the beginning. We did a lot of therapies. We did a lot of salt therapy, and I was breastfeeding, so I was on every supplement on the planet. Really set a foundation up, did a few other things that were definitely against the grain for him. And now there's no fear anymore. It's like he just is as he is and he's amazing. I don't tell this Geordie's story because I think we're amazing or that we've got all the answers. I tell Geordie's story because I think no matter what health challenge that you're faced with, really your mindset is going to set you apart from the rest. And that's really the thing that stood out, I think, with Geordie and that experience was that if I could focus on health, I found it. And I think all too often we focus on illness and therefore we see illness and we create more of that. So it's been such an empowering experience, something that we're so grateful for and something that we've learnt that we just never, ever take our health for granted. And I know that's very cliche, but it's really often not until it looks like it's not going to be there anymore that we start to step up and actually invest in it. And Geordie's an everyday reminder that we have to invest in ours, and that's forever.
I've mentioned before, everyone has their own health story. The choices that we make can have such a huge influence on how your story ends. While we've spoken a lot about the dysfunction in our current mainstream model of medicine, there's also a lot of hope for where the future of medicine is going. Although slow, there are some very positive changes occurring, and let's hope that in another 10 years, the approach to kids like Geordie is different again. We are in such a health crisis that it's going to take a lot to turn things around. Our very best chance is to look to the next generation. Jenny Tichy is a trailblazer in this area. Also known as the Lunchbox Doctor, Jenny advocates for healthy eating for kids and setting them up for healthy habits for life. I asked Jenny why we need to look to children to improve our collective health.
So children are the future, they're tomorrow. And certainly And I do think it's a generational thing. And I think a whole generation missed out on a whole load of knowledge around actually cooking from scratch. It used to be that cooking from scratch was a technique which was passed down without people realising it from generation to generation. And it's certainly, I know in my generation, we had a political leader in this country who basically said, women should be out at work. They don't need to be taught how to cook. So that whole subject just seemed to be wiped off any curriculum. And we weren't taught how to cook, particularly those that were quite academic and were looking at sort of university. It's like, why do they need to know how to cook? Well, we do, actually, quite frankly. But our children, I believe, can turn that around. And it's so empowering. I actually do a bit of work with GB athletes. Now they have, and they're often the teenagers that are on the verge of, big things. And they have a great incentive to want to eat well, which is fantastic. And they take it really seriously. But what I love seeing when I work with these athletes, quite often they'll come to workshops with their parents. Their parents will come and see me as a group. The children will come and see me as a group. And I'll work with them. And then the parents will come back months later and they'll say, wow, what have you done? Because the children are educating the parents about what their bodies need and how they need to be getting that from, real food sources, what they need to be putting into a recovery drink, what they need to be eating before a match, how they're going to keep going for the tournament all day on Saturday. And I think our children have a total capacity to help educate up, but I also think educate out, and from my perspective, that's about if those parents are interested or coaches are interested or teachers are interested, which I think they all are, is helping children become the educators, showing by example that eating healthily is not something to be laughed at. It's something to be embraced. And look at the people that are. Look how good they are.
Where do you see the future of health?
I think my child's generation are going to be the healthiest yet. I'm really confident that we've learnt the lessons of the past, and I feel for the generation above me, like my parents' generations and those in the generation above, because they only know low fat and big food, and we see the health consequences of that. But since the real food movement and the education that I have personally and where we're going in Australia, we're going to see a huge shift in the right direction. Now, they're still going to have the marketing and the social media and the challenges to deal with, but my mum thought she was doing best feeding me low-fat K-Time bars as a snack. That's not going to happen in our generation. We've got the knowledge now and we can pass that on and go full circle to what our great-grandparents or what the generation before did, which was before the Industrial Revolution and before we had supermarkets and canning and all the convenience that has caused a lot of the problem that we see today. So I think it's really exciting, especially when I feel like, now I've learned this and I will continue to learn firsthand, as you probably do with your clients. We can spread the knowledge about how to feed a child, and you don't have to go down the rice cereal route like we're told in that space. There are so many other options, and which food when is something that I'm really looking forward to learning firsthand and being able to share with my audience, because that obviously shapes your child's health, and there's so much in our control that we've given away up until now.
I agree with Steph here. Our children's generation will be the healthiest yet. Although there is still some change to come. I totally get Jenny's plight with the lunchbox doctor. I've got a 6-year-old daughter who is in a phase where she's constantly complaining about not having enough unhealthy food in her lunchbox when all of her friends do. Her name is Luna, and I thought that since our children are the future, that I should get her opinion on the matter of gut health. Can you please tell me, what's your name?
Luna Maslen.
And how old are you, Luna?
6.
Tell me, are you healthy?
Yep.
How healthy?
I eat lots of veggies, so I'm very healthy.
What other foods are healthy?
Lots of fruits and veggies, like carrots and apples and pears.
What does it mean to be healthy?
It means like you eat good and you're I don't know.
What does it mean to be unhealthy?
So like you get sick and you get fat.
So what kind of foods make you unhealthy?
Like Fanta and the sugary foods.
What do you know about your digestive system?
So your digestive system crunches up the food so you can poo it out or pee it out.
And do you think your digestive system is important?
It's important because if you don't poo, you'll get really sick.
Do you ever get a sore tummy?
Sometimes when I eat and drink too much.
And what kind of foods give you a sore tummy?
Well, lots and lots of Fanta or a lot of donuts.
Tell me, what's your favourite thing in the world?
Unicorns and donuts.
What's the most important thing if you want to grow up healthy?
You need to eat a tiny bit of chocolate and eat lots of veggies and you need to take care of yourself.
You can tell that Luna is my child because of the chocolate comment. In fact, I don't think this series would have been possible without the help of cacao, which is my equivalent to coffee. You might have picked up the fact that my daughter loves donuts, and she does eat them sometimes. But what's important is that although we're not purists and we definitely get pizza and sometimes eat chocolate, that the base of her diet is very healthy, free from gluten, dairy, and pretty low in sugar. However, if it were up to Luna, there would definitely be a lot more donuts, and like all parents, I get resistance around her eating lots of healthy foods. But all we can do as parents is talk to our kids and try and get them to understand the importance of health and appreciate the functions of their body. I think one thing is for sure. Our perceptions around health and what it means to be healthy are definitely shifting. With the age of the internet, people now have access to real independent sources of information, and they don't have to rely on government guidelines to make decisions about their health. This docu-series took 6 months to bring together and a lot of hard work. But the reason that I did this and the reason that the experts volunteered their time to this project is because we are all so passionate about changing what health is really about and helping to shift our collective health in the right direction. But we don't have to wait for our kids to grow up to fix this problem. You can change your health right now. Small shifts lead to profound changes, and it is never too late to get started. Research on the microbiome is changing the way that we view health and the human body, and there's some very interesting research going on in regards to treatment. So what is the future of medicine when it comes to the gut? What's on the horizon?
I think in the near term, I think the degree of scientization of medicine will continue at a fever pitch, and to some degree that's a good thing, because I think that modern science is revealing some incredible opportunities for us to have an impact on some very important and pervasive issues. But ultimately, I think that mainstream medicine will continue to validate the importance of these holistic perspectives and the relationship perspectives that have been undervalued. We have a Cartesian model of reductionism, dividing the body into its component parts, dividing diseases based upon the function of component parts, and therefore designing monotherapies to attack those individual problems. And I think we're just at the very beginning of welcoming the notion of an integrative, holistic, broad-reaching perspective in dealing with our issues. And I will say, this has been how medicine has always been practiced until quite recently. So we're starting to see that. We're seeing that even as it relates to something like Alzheimer's. Work of a Dr. Dale Bredesen, for example, where he is leveraging 36 different ideas to actually reverse Alzheimer's disease for the first time in human history. And I think that mentality will become more pervasive as it relates to, there are drugs for coronary artery disease. There are drugs to lower cholesterol, as if that's necessarily a good thing. But at the same time, we've heard for many years of a heart-smart diet. I don't necessarily agree with the heart-smart diet from a scientific perspective. But what I'm saying is it shows us the blending of pharmacy with nutrition. So we're beginning to see that more and more, and I really am excited about that.
That was neurologist Dr. David Perlmutter. Work by specialists such as David are really paving the way for this integration that he spoke about, fusing diet and lifestyle recommendations with appropriate treatments. What a wonderful world it would be when all doctors understand the importance of lifestyle medicine in treating imbalance. Another strong advocate for this style of healthcare is cardiologist Dr. William Davis. You heard in episode 1 William's own health crisis story and how he turned it around with diet and lifestyle interventions. This was at odds with the way he'd been treating his cardiology patients for years, and it led him to go down a path of helping patients with lifestyle medicine instead of drugs. Dr. William and I spoke about the future of healthcare. Do you see in the future that doctors need to be that primary health provider and know all the nutrition, or that they just need to learn to collaborate with other people that know this stuff and guide people in the right direction?
You know, I've become very cynical, Catherine. I've stopped hoping that everyday mainstream doctors will ever get it, because there's no money in getting it right. I tell people, become useless to the healthcare system by being healthy. In other words, I see this happen every day. If you are healthy with normal blood pressure, low triglycerides, normal blood sugar, normal hemoglobin A1C, you look good, you feel good, the doctor gets upset with you. Like you need Lipitor, or you need to take aspirin, or you need to be told to take this or that. In other words, the system is not designed to help you become healthy. I've lost hope that mainstream doctors will ever do that. Maybe I'll be wrong in 50 years, but it's not going to happen by Tuesday. And so that's why I think what you're doing, what the naturopath community, the integrative health community, the functional medicine doctor community, the people who understand that health is not something you get by a prescription. It's what you obtain by diet, how you conduct your life, how you sleep, all those kinds of natural things. That's what really matters, but there's no money in that, and that's the big dilemma here.
We spoke about some of the dilemmas with Big Pharma in episode 9, so we won't revisit it here. But what is clear is that we need to build a healthcare model that is focused on wellness. The entire mainstream medical model is built to treat disease with drugs, often in a symptomatic sense. Most medical conditions are due to a lack of health, so can't be cured by a drug. What if we had a system where the primary goal was to enhance health?
There are still people in the world who give a shit. There are still people who actually go, hey, it sucks to feel like this every day, but guess what? You don't have to. Guess what? There are little things you can do that mean that you don't have to feel that way. And I think once you start to realize that there are still people in the world who care about health and happiness, you can achieve anything.
This is our patient Katie, who you heard from in episodes 1 and 2. What I love most about Katie's recovery isn't that she eliminated bloating or cleared up her skin or got her energy back. It was the enormous shift in her mindset that happened over the months of healing. I'm pleased to report that not only is Katie not sick anymore, she is thriving. When I interviewed her, she'd just gotten back from an 8-week trip around Europe where she was able to eat, drink and be merry without too much worry about her gut. To me, this is success, being able to live your life, which is what we should all have the right to do.
No one can tell you what you're worth. No one can tell you what you deserve. And if anyone should try that, be confident enough to disagree with them. Be confident enough that you know your worth and be confident enough that you know what you deserve. And once I learnt that, I was like, wow, I lived in this environment where I let all these things that I'm not okay with and I would never do to someone else be okay and be done to me.
We learnt in the last episode that our microbiome is probably the most important factor when it comes to disease prevention and treatment. So what do we have in store treatment-wise? For us at Shift, rebiosis is a primary goal for both people on our online Gut Shift program, but also our clinic members. Rebiosis is the re-establishment of the natural diverse microbiome that you're meant to have to prevent disease. This can be done using dietary modification, but also herbal medicine and specific probiotics to help to tip this balance. A lot of these dietary techniques we spoke about in episode 8. I asked Rodney Diertert, author of the amazing microbiome book, The Human Superorganism, how can we reverse damage we've done to our microbiomes as we look to the future?
We do it by, if you haven't done it already, with women, with young women, and to-be moms, potential to-be moms, do it then. Do it during pregnancy. Help mom and her microbiome and prepare the microbiome that will be installed in the baby by mom, largely. Not exclusively, but largely. So if you had a diabetic pregnant woman, why not start to work on the microbiome and diet and, manage holistically, manage the whole person. And in doing so, you will, if that microbiome is what we would say in a state of dysbiosis or is restricted because of being in concert with diabetes, and you can argue, did the diabetes produce the altered microbiome or did the altered microbiome produce the diabetes? And it can kind of go either way. Do something about that. So you can evaluate the microbiome, you can see what's missing that would really need to be there, you can see what the baby will need to have, and you can see what would help mom's diabetes in terms of metabolism. Do something then. So the OBGYN is if it hasn't been done already by mom's primary physician, then the OBGYN has a 2-generational health benefit opportunity, and that's help mom's microbiome and prepare what the baby will get.
I totally get what Rodney's saying here. Working on the microbiome is something that we've made a main part of our management plans for our pregnant members in recent years. One gift we can give to our children is a healthy microbiome, which will set them up for robust health throughout their lives. Probiotic therapy is really taking off. I know that a lot of you that are listening now will actually be taking probiotics in the hope of better gut health. In my practice, I'm using more and more probiotics. When I began practicing naturopathy 12 years ago, we stocked just 3 different probiotics, and now we have over 15. Research on specific probiotic strains in humans now means that we can begin to look for a specific strain for things like allergies or autoimmunity or diarrhea or rebiosis, depending on what the patient needs. The future of probiotic therapy looks bright, and I can't wait to see what comes up here. What I think we'll see is individualized probiotic therapy based on your specific microbial profile. This tailored modification of the microbiome may be the solution to many chronic diseases, perhaps even replacing some of the drugs that are currently used. I think we really have to watch this space. Another very interesting area is that of fecal microbial transplants, or FMTs. This is basically taking somebody else's poo and putting it inside of your digestive tract. Gross, I know, but FMTs have been known to yield miraculous results in certain subsets of patients. You might remember Cale Brock, creator of the Gut movie, from episode 11. I asked him what was the most surprising thing that he learnt while creating the movie.
I think the most surprising thing for me was learning about FMTs and fecal microbiota transplantations and how game-changing they may be. And I predicted very early on that if you want to have a strong business in the future and you want to make money off of something you do every day, pooping, keep yourself healthy, because you're going to be able to sell your poop one day. And it's literally become a thing. People are selling their poop as therapeutic interventions to actually use to heal someone. It's incredible. And we're seeing this adaptation from the scientific community and certain practitioners around the world who are actually starting to offer FMT. It's becoming quite prevalent in today's world. So that's probably the most interesting part of doing the whole movie and this whole last decade of looking into gut health. It's what FMT is going to open up for us, and the idea that is there a perfect microbiome signature out there that we could replicate and harvest from someone and inoculate the entire diseased population and fix them. Is that going to happen? I don't know, because as Professor Borodi says, they don't know exactly what's in a fecal sample. They don't know what's in a donor's poo. They only know what's not in there, and if there are certain components that are not in there, they assume that it's safe, and the person is healthy, they assume that it's safe. So as that area progresses, I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for improving people's health with and I don't like saying it, but with a once-off sort of health intervention, like a come and fix me and then I'm right again kind of deal. When I do also want to say that I think that it should be more a case of looking at this from a preventative standpoint and a prophylactic standpoint. We need to actually take action every single day to look after our gut. You don't just do a 12-week program and then fix your gut. It's a lifelong journey. But for those people who have been damaged, for instance, by antibiotics and cannot reverse that situation, that's where I think FMTs are going to be really powerful going into the future. The implications are there for diabetes, for neurological conditions, for digestive ailments, for emotional, mental health challenges. All these different things are affected heavily by what goes on in our gut. And I think with the smart, patient and strategic implementation of FMT procedures, we can definitely start to get on top of some of those conditions in a much more holistic and much less invasive or less damaging way.
Yeah, super interesting. And as you said, it's like looking at that prevention. There's no point giving someone an FMT if they're not going to change what they're doing that got them there in the first place kind of thing. But the science is so rudimentary compared to what it will be. It's crazy, but it's also come so far. Like I can't imagine in 10 or 20 years where it's going to be. It's just going to be mind-blowing, I think.
We'll have capsules. There'll be capsules available. Like people will be able to go into a clinic and say, I'll have 120 caps, sun, Bushman poo, please. That's where it's going. I guarantee that will happen one day. And who knows what that future will look like.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. The crapsule revolution.
Capsules.
You've heard a lot of client stories throughout this series, and you might be wondering if we could perhaps help you. Supporting people to shift is what we do best. Health is a journey, and we can help you to navigate this with one-on-one support with our clinical naturopaths, hypnotherapists and counsellors. If working with us one-on-one interests you, go to theshiftclinic.com and click on Shift with Us.
The Shift!
Steph Lowe is a nutritionist that specialises in physical performance, and she had a really interesting example of how an FMT worked in a patient.
I think about one example. I read an article about a FMT, so a poo transplant, where a particular male athlete was experiencing a lot of issues with adrenal dysfunction or chronic fatigue or something of that space, and he selected his donor from this elite female mountain bike rider. So he chose her as the perfect donor, used her poo for the FMT, and basically sat and waited. But quite interestingly, his performance was really quite exponential from that point in time. And we joke about it in the FMT space about it being like shop for your poo, like design a poo. Like if you want to be a good athlete, then that's whose donor poo you select. And I think that's a really interesting space as well, because it obviously completely changes the microbiome.
Evidence for the use of fecal microbial transplants is still growing, but it has been shown to be effective in the treatment of recurrent Clostridium difficile and has had some promising research for the treatment of ulcerative colitis, metabolic syndrome, and graft versus host disease. Given the complexity of our microbiomes, I think there's still a lot more research that we need in this area. In particular, as technology advances, we might be able to identify better matches between donor and recipient, leading to some very interesting results. Again, this is a space to watch. Microbiome testing is another area of interest. With advances in technology, we're now able to map the microbiome using DNA analysis with the smallest amount of poo. In most locations, you can now order a microbiome test online, send it off and have your results emailed to you. Two of the notable companies offering this service is Microba in Australia and Viome in the US. Mapping your microbiome can be useful, and as the technology gets better and these tests become more affordable, we'll see more of this becoming commonplace. At Shift, we've been doing several different types of stool analysis for over 10 years, and adding this newer generation microbiome testing has been helpful for a lot of our patients. But as I've mentioned earlier, we are still in early stages of all of this. Dr. Felice Gersh spoke to me about some of the limitations and dangers of our current level of knowledge about the gut.
There's more data coming out that probiotics have tremendously different impact in different guts, and it may have to do with what's the microbiome to begin with. In some cases, when they've given probiotics after antibiotic therapy, it's actually delayed the healing process of the gut microbiome, delayed it by over 6 months. So we are really at the beginning of understanding how to use fecal transplants, how to use probiotics, because there's a lot of individual variation. There were studies out of Israel showing that depending on the gut microbiome, and now we have such crazy gut microbiomes, you can give the same food, and we're talking about like healthy food, real food, whole food. You can give the same food to different people, and you get tremendously different glycemic response. So in some people, the glucose level shoots up, their insulin shoots up, and in others, it stays nice and low. And it all seems to depend on the gut microbiome. And we're just barely scratching the surface when we give people diets. We don't even know what it's really doing to different people with their guts. But the first step in doing anything useful is to recognize the problem. I mean, we can never solve a problem if we don't even define it. And I think now we're getting to the point where at least those of us in the integrative functional medicine world are starting to really recognize our limitations, the problem, the scope of the problem, and hopefully get the word out so that people will know, like you, that this starts preconception.
There are actually specific strains that have been shown in research to help us recuperate after antibiotics. So when we're looking at any research about probiotics, we need to ask the question, what was the specific strain that was used? So what is a specific strain? An analogy that you could use is to compare probiotics to pets. Let's say that Lactobacillus is all pets. Lactobacillus acidophilus might be cats, and Lactobacillus rhamnosus is dogs. There are hundreds of different breeds of dogs, right? Well, each breed is a subspecies of Lactobacillus rhamnosus. Let's say that Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is a husky and Lactobacillus rhamnosus GR1 is a chihuahua. These dogs are so very different, and you couldn't use a chihuahua to pull a sleigh, and you wouldn't put a husky in your handbag. This is how different these strains can be in their function. Taking this example, we know from research that Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG has evidence for use in allergies and microbiome restoration, and that Lactobacillus rhamnosus GR1 has evidence for urogenital complaints. We see a lot of our patients being told by their doctors to take a probiotic. While this is a step in the right direction, without being strain specific, you could be taking something that really isn't helping you and could even hinder your health. Health isn't just about your microbes or your physiology. It's about encompassing all of you. How you feel day to day really is the best indicator of health to me. You met Dan Churchill earlier in the series. He's a celebrity chef and an advocate for healthy, delicious food. I asked him what good health looked like to him.
There is absolutely no clearer indicator of your health than your happiness. And so that is for me an absolutely phenomenal thing.
What is happiness?
Well, happiness, I like to put it, is not just when you're at 6% body fat and, eating steamed chicken breast and steamed broccoli to get to your next, bodybuilding session looking fantastic, because they are the unhappiest people in the world, in my opinion, because they've gone through so much starvation of good things. But no, to me, happiness is when you have your psychological, your mental, your physical, your hormonal and your spiritual, happiness and health all in alignment. And often we concentrate so much on nutrition and physicality as when it comes to health. So, as I said earlier, like how much you're working out and what you're eating, but how often do you call mum and dad? How often you actually stop and, your business partners who are formerly friends stop and actually go, let's go have a coffee at another shop. How often are you given to yourself and actually thinking about clearing your head or reading a book just so you can be you? I think so often people think of health as these two main pillars and neglect so many other factors that we have that is amazing in this amazing world.
To express our authentic self means to live without fear. Fear of judgment, fear of our own capabilities, our own possibilities.
Pete Evans is the paleo guy, a celebrity chef and an advocate for living a healthy and fulfilled life. We got talking about being authentic and being able to really express ourselves how we want to. How do we tap into our potential?
One of the great sayings is one of our greatest fears is of our potential. And I see that in so many people. I've seen it in myself. I still see it in myself. We are conditioned to have fears about our own uniqueness, our own authenticity. We seem to be going along a trajectory through this modern age of mainstream media where freedom of speech and our own belief systems that we can form ourselves, if they do not fit into the current narrative, are seen to be extreme, or you can be ridiculed as crazy and sensationalized. And that's all well and good. I understand the reasoning behind that, because if you do think differently from the pack, then that can create fears in the pack, because it brings up a mirror for themselves, whether it be society, whether it be individual consciousness, whether it be the collective consciousness, that if somebody stands out from the pack and is questioning the mainstream logic or the mainstream narrative, and they seem to be doing pretty well, whether it's health-wise, family-wise, whatever it may be, that could raise questions of doubt in people's belief systems. And when people's belief systems are challenged by themselves, because only your own belief system can be challenged by yourself, it's up to you whether you want to challenge that and take in any different information from different sources, which is what we're doing now. And I'm not here to say that I know everything. I'm here to say that I'm learning as I go, and in 5 years' time I'll probably have a very different perspective on myself and the world at large, and my own belief systems will probably be changed. But one thing that probably won't be is my curiosity for truth and the seeking of my own truth and how to remove myself from fear, which is difficult at times.
Fear. It is the one thing that stops us in our tracks time and time again. What if I don't succeed? What if it's too hard? What will other people think of me? What if it doesn't work? We have to be very conscious of the thoughts that we have. What is the narrative you currently have running for yourself? If you want to change your future, you have to change your inner narrative and create an environment where you have the space to heal. Part of this healing journey is about reconnecting. Reconnecting with ourselves, but also in a more general sense to the world around us. I loved what Dr. David Perlmutter had to say about this.
I believe that what we're seeing globally is something called Disconnection Syndrome, which that's not a name you would have heard of yet, but you will. It means that we are disconnected at so many levels from being on our path. We're disconnected from the gift of our genome because we're changing our gene expression for the negative. We're disconnected from the life supportive signaling coming from our microbiome, the fact that our 100 trillion gut bacteria want to do everything they can to keep us healthy. We're disconnected from the area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex that allows us to be the people we really could be: compassionate, empathetic, planning for the future. We're disconnected from each other, from understanding the ideas of another individual. We're disconnected from our neighbors. We're disconnected from other countries, and we're disconnected from our planet. So what I'm passionate about moving forward at this stage in my life is the notion of giving people information about reconnecting through all of those examples that I just mentioned. Reconnecting to nature, reconnecting to the signals of our genome, reconnecting to our microbiomes, reconnecting, most importantly, to each other. Because the signals are not indicating that we're going in the right direction. And I think we absolutely can. And that's what I wake up in the morning thinking about, that we can do this. We've created a website, it isn't even up yet, called Global Reconnect. And it's going just to be about providing the tools that people can use to make those connections that can bring them personal happiness. And if you do that, I will be happier. If you do that, the Dalai Lama said, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. So in a very real sense, when each of us begins to tap into that resource, reconnecting to our prefrontal cortex, and engage in more compassionate actions towards each other, towards our gut, towards the planet, we'll move the needle, I think, and go in the right direction.
Moving forward, how can we be more in tune with our bodies? How can we give ourselves the best opportunity at healing?
I think shutting stimulation out is number one. So getting off the phone, even getting out of whatever they are in. So whether that's getting out of the office, getting out of, the home, and just being on their own, and also just tuning in to what's there in the present moment. And it's so simple, but it's so easy. And I think the challenge is creating those pockets for ourselves of when you do give yourself permission to be like, you know what, at lunchtime, I'm not going to go to that meeting for 40 minutes. I'm going to go for half an hour. I'll show up, I'll do my thing. And then I'm going to walk back to the office and just be on my own, not put my headphones in, not listen to something, but just be on my own and create space. Because there's so much available to us in every single moment, and so much energy that Source wants to bring in, our creativity, our beautiful energy and ideas and inspiration. But if we don't have space to receive it, we're not going to get anything. And that's that whole thing about everyone's big ideas and inspirations and creativity strikes when we're in the shower. And that's happened to me my whole life because I'm relaxed. I've got hot water running down. I'm not thinking about too much. And then I'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to create this. And it'll just drop in. Or when you're walking along the beach, or, you're just looking at a tree, or, but we have to create those moments of stillness without any stimulation to receive what's available to us.
That was Kate Reardon with some really great practical advice there. What can you do today to create a bit of space? Perhaps to reflect on this series and what it means for you. We started this episode with Nat Kringudis' remarkable story about her son Geordie, who has cystic fibrosis, and her decision to choose a different path to the one that she was dealt. We have such a great opportunity to make meaningful change in our lives simply by looking at how we're existing. Here's Nat again.
We can look at our body and be saying, why are you doing this? You're failing me. I'm so sick of this. It's not okay. I give up. And in every situation, your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing under the circumstances. It can be really tricky and confronting to learn that your illness more than likely is a response to your environment and your lifestyle. That can be really confronting to learn that. I understand that in patients, and people get quite upset at me for saying that, but I'm like, yeah, but it is. You're not doing it knowingly necessarily, but It is. It's responding to what you're putting it in. I say we're like petri dishes. You know, we all did this biology experiment in year 10 or wherever it was, where you put bacteria or whatever in one petri dish, and in two petri dish, you put one in the incubator, you put one on the windowsill, and what grew was different. Well, that's us. We are exactly the same. It's just a matter of the environment that we are subjecting ourselves to.
Yeah, it is really confronting. But I think the first step really for people to want to make a change is they need to take that self-responsibility and go, well, I'm creating, this reality to an extent.
I say to patients all the time, think about that one person that you know that's bat crap crazy, that has, against all odds, done the thing that they wanted to do. Whether it's run a marathon or become a New York Times bestseller, or they had their eye on the prize. They weren't going to waver. They were going to do whatever it took to get to that point. Now start to apply that to your health.
You need to be brave to make a shift. It is easy to stay the same, but if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results you've always gotten. If you've made it this far through the series, I know that somewhere inside of you, you truly want to make a shift in your life. Now is the time to take responsibility for your health and the life that you've created for yourself. My hope is that something you've listened to over the last 12 episodes has ignited a spark inside of you that's a catalyst for positive change. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I can't wait to see you make your next big shift.
We could talk all day long.
Yes.
Next time.
But I really appreciate your giving me the opportunity to share my experience, my feelings, my thoughts.
My pleasure.
I want to take a moment to express the gratitude that I have for the humans that have helped me to bring this project to life. Thank you to Ronsley, Shade, and the team at Amplify for helping me to create the shift and bring this to the world. Thank you to my amazing team at Shift and Brisbane Natural Health for being my cheerleaders and putting up with me while I worked tirelessly on this project. And most of all, I want to thank each and every one of the patients that I've had the honour of working with over the past 12 years. Your bravery, vulnerability, and commitment to living a better life has inspired me to be an advocate for helping others to do the same.
This series is produced by Must Amplify. Hosted by Katherine Maslen. Executive producer Ronsley Vaz. Music and sound design by Shade Furlong. Thank you to all of our experts. For more details on them, go to theshiftclinic.com/gut.
Still listening? From working with thousands of patients, I know that learning doesn't always equate to doing. For some of you, I know that you'll listen and take action right away, but for others, you're going to need a little more help. That's why I've developed my Gut Shift program. Over 12 weeks, I'll take you through what you need to make a shift in your gut health step by step. It's based on the latest clinical research combined with the clinical experience from seeing thousands of patients. Registrations are now open. Go to theshiftclinic.com and click on Shift with Us.
The Shift!
Thank you for listening.
Every listen or download of this show
and hence this voice
directly funds the ending of sex
and human trafficking.
A voice for a voice.
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 Find out more at
Amplify.
Amplify.
Impacts.
Impact.
.com.
.com.